Hello, and welcome to the Union Development Services Financial Risk Module. As a recognized student organization or an RSO, you must be able to identify, define, and communicate your risk management responsibilities. When planning for an event or activity, the organization must consider financial risks that may be posed to an organization and plan to avoid them. Well-formed plans can prevent innumerable foreseeable events from occurring. Through pre-event plans, are essential to managing risk as they allow for appropriate mitigation strategies to be set in place. Managing risk is an important part of being a successful student organization and what makes many of the events held on campus possible. The best time to undertake a comprehensive risk management program is before an incident at an event. Let's start by identifying financial risk. Financial risk is any time that there is a situation that might negatively impact the financial stability of your organization or another organization. It's your job to avoid these risks in the best way that we can assure financial well being of your members and the organization as a whole. Let's start to effectively manage financial risk. We'll follow the three basic steps: identify the risk, assess the likelihood that the risk will occur, and finally mitigate or minimize the risk the best you can. Let's start by discussing the strategies for identifying risk. We can look at the common financial risks that may occur that many organizations face when they decide to host an event. Let's look at the common financial issues faced by an RSO. First, we have lack of funds. If an organization does not charge regular dues to its members, there is a risk that people will begin to be pressured to donate personal funds to an organization, which is not equitable. If you do not charge dues, have you looked into potential outside sources, fundings such as outside grants, on campus funding opportunities, and outside donors? Next, we have misuse of funds slash theft. This occurs when an organization uses funds for unnecessary or non organizational items. Additionally, if an appropriate cash handling procedures are not in place, it's easier for an individual to steal or take money. Next, we have misjudging the potential interests of an event. If there are fewer guests than expected, the cost of the event may exceed the amount of revenue that the organization will make from ticket sales or other financing. We must be careful to be realistic in our planning for an event. We would like to avoid spending more money to host an event or activity than to make it in return. Unexpected expenses. Organizations must always recognize that they plan for a possibility of charges that are higher than predicted and additional damages or even theft. It's really important to think about expenses likely to occur based on activities. Examples are upfront costs, advertising for activities slash recruitment, startup costs for fundraisers, etc. Each of these risks could result in a cost of an event being higher than expected. What are the ways that your organization faces financial risk? A risking a rising financial risk for organization is copyright or trademark violations. When planning an event and activity, it's easy to plan publicity with images or phrases we Googled, but many don't realize that the images are copyrighted or trademarked. When an organization uses a copyrighted slash trademarked image or phrase, they open themselves up to hefty fines and potential lawsuits. Organizations could be sued for damages if they use any items on posters, banners, t shirts, or advertisements that are protected under copyright law unless they are written consent of the owner of the copyright. Now that we've discussed how to identify financial risks, let's discuss how to assess them. Start by thinking about the common financial missteps that could occur. These are generally operational items that, as well as an activity or event specific items. We recommend ranking both the likelihood of the risk and the seriousness of the consequence if the risk were to occur on a scale from 1 to 3. 1 equaling unlikely or minor, 2 is possible or common, and 3 is likely or major. Based on the severity of the consequence, the likelihood that it's occur. If your risk is classified as a 3, this is a high risk situation and should be taken seriously. if you should be given strong thought on whether the event activity should occur. However, if a risk is classified as a 1, it may not require the same level of attention. A 3 would be something that could put your organization's existence in jeopardy if it occurs. This could be something like treasurer embezzling all the organization's funds or copyright lawsuit. A 2 on the chart would be something a little bit less catastrophic, but still serious, like some member refusing to pay dues or failure to update the budget. A 1 on the chart is something isn't ideal, but probably wouldn't hurt the organization badly, or is easily corrected, like losing an invoice for a minor payment. Every situation is different, and obviously, we would love to always eliminate all risk factors for our organization. But at the end of the day, the most important thing is to recognize which risks pose a serious threat and handling those effectively. Now that we've discussed how to identify, assess financial risks, let's discuss some simple actions that every organization can take to minimize the likelihood of these risks. Here are a few basic actions that can help any organization keep their finances straight and all the money accounted for. We recommend keeping a record of all the organization's expenses so that there is never any doubt about how an organization's funds are being used. When planning for an event, look at past records of expense for similar events so that you can have an accurate idea of what costs you should expect. If your organization is not correctly keeping record of past expense, take it upon yourself to make a practice and future members will thank you. We also recommend making a detailed budget for each event for your organization as planning. This will make you consider specific expenses and give you more accurate estimates on total costs and the amount so far and not nearly enough. You might want to set aside miscellaneous funds for projects and sporadical things that come up. If you do not currently charge dues, you could use this to determine if dues are necessary. If every member pays $10 per year, helps reduce out-of-pocket costs for members, it may be worth it. Create a cash handling plan as well. Every organization make it clear who has access to the organization's bank account, debit cards, and approval process for making a purchase. Only designated chapter leadership, like the treasurer, president, or advisor, should have access to organization funds for the security of the entire organization. Finally, try to always have a little bit of safety cash available to cover unexpected expenses, taxes, fees. We typically recommend that an organization reserves 5 to 10% of the total budget for emergency or unexpected expenses. No matter how well you plan, there's always a possibility of something unexpected occurring that may cost your organization. Organizations who may not have firm financial processes, the best time to implement them is now. First, make a plan limiting access to your organization's funds. We recommend that funds be stored in a bank account or similar secure location. There are plenty of local or national banks with locations here in Kirksville who will be willing to assist. Research services to select a bank that best fits your needs. If you or have a plan organization that needs a debit card, credit card, consider laying out rules for who can use the card and approval process before purchases can be made, as well as spending limits. Think about it. Which officer should be listed on the account? Will you require more than one officer's signature on checks? Will your advisor be listed on the accounts? In order to get a bank account, you will need to apply for an employer identification number if you do not have one already. If you do not know how to apply for one, you can find the instructions on the UNI's website under resources. The employer identification number will take the place of using a social security number for an account. Your employer identification card is your social security number, is your club social security number, so don't share it with anyone, or you could end up being personally responsible for account activity or fees down the road. You will be required to respond to the IRS each year. After securing your employer identification card, take in information and start off a fund to a bank, so make sure you get your funds secure. It's important that an EIN Information is passed down during officer transition, so future officers can easily change names on bank accounts and file necessary IRS paperwork. Finally, check the UNI website for more financial tips. We have information on tax exempt, gambling versus fundraising, and much more. To illustrate financial risk that we have discussed today, you should be able to consider before almost any organization event. Let's consider an example. Let's say that the Ballroom Dancing Club is planning to host a banquet. The rental space can hold 100 people, and the total cost is $1,000. As a result, they decide to charge $10 per ticket to cover the cost. The organization does not have typically bill out dues to their members, so the president of the Ballroom Dancing Club pays the deposit personally and gets back the reimbursement as they receive revenue from the ticket sales. Take a minute to think about the situation, the process of identifying, assessing, and mitigating risks that we have discussed today. Are there any risks that are recognized associated with this event? If so, what are some actions that could take to minimize the risk? A few potential risks that may come to mind are the possibility of not selling enough tickets to pay for the cost of the venue, the possibility of the president being forced to personally pay for the extra expense, the possibility of unforeseen damages to the banquet hall that could cause by your guests during the event. To help avoid these risks, you should consider the following ideas. Should we charge dues so the organization bears the financial risk instead of one person? Should we pre-sell tickets so it ensures that we have enough interest to cover our event? Should we increase ticket prices applies for supporting funds and otherwise raise money to cover the extra costs? If we don't sell enough tickets or if there are damages to the venue, are we violating any copyright or trademark policies in our advertising? Do we have insurance for this event if needed? All of these thoughts are thought that the Ballroom Dancing Club should explore more deeply to minimize the financial risk of hosting their banquet. If they are successfully following the steps of identification, assessment, and mitigation, they should be able to host a financially responsible event. Hopefully, this module has been helpful in educating you about how to identify, assess, and minimize financial risk for your organization. Additionally, resources can be found on the involvement.truman.edu, and you can always reach out to UNI Financial Advisement Consultant at orgs@truman.edu for personalized advice. That's all we have today for managing financial risk. Thanks for listening and spend responsibly.